And Padmaja now joins us to tell us where exactly does this play out.
Now, this is the area. I'm not going to specify which exact area in the Tawang sector. Now, remember, Tawang itself is quite some distance away from the LAC, Priya. But we are not going to mention the exact spots on the LAC where this face-off has taken place. But this is the general area of Tawang that we are talking about. Let me just put it in context, since you were talking about, why this clash has happened and what is the political fallout of this. Remember that 3 weeks ago is when Arunachal Pradesh was given its first greenfield airport. Now, remember, when it comes to Ladakh, China is making a very aggressive push in terms of building up its infrastructure. India, of course, is also reciprocating with its own border roads organization, doing a massive build-up as far as our infrastructure is concerned. But one area where India has particularly paid attention is the northeast, which is where Arunachal comes in. In Arunachal, not only do we have our first greenfield airport, but in the last few years, almost as much as 27 to 30,000 crore rupees have been pumped into the northeast to ensure that we have got pakka roads, we have got metal roads, we have got all-weather roads going all the way up to the LAC. And that is a major infrastructure push which routinely has rattled China quite a bit. So while this is the broader Tawang sector that we are talking about, you also must keep in mind that any kind of retaliation or any kind of activity or any kind of, aggressive behavior by the Chinese must be put into context, keeping in mind the kind of infrastructure build-up that India has been doing, especially in its eastern sector along the line of actual control, point number one. And point number two, also remember that this is not, in 2020 in eastern Ladakh is when the last such skirmish had taken place, and now 2.5 years later, we are seeing a reaction like this by the Chinese in Arunachal just 3 weeks after a massive airport and the first greenfield airport in Arunachal is inaugurated.
Right, so it probably could be a sign of nervousness on the part of an expansionist China. Madhav, India had last time changed its weapons rules along the LAC, where the field commanders were allowed to use firearms also in this case. However, if we consider the fact that the flag meeting has already been held, there are only minor injuries, the situation, should we now assume, has been completely absolved?
Well, at the moment that appears to be the case, but what is very clear is that this is a very, very important thing to note, that China certainly is not going to let India or let at any event let the LAC or the fact that it has not been clearly defined go unnoticed. They're going to continue to make these kind of attempts to cross over the LAC. We've seen it happen in the past. And China, despite India warning it at several international fora and sending out a clear message that this is completely unacceptable, continues to provoke with this kind of behavior. And it is not just the fact that Indian government marked a change, a paradigm shift in its own policy, where in earlier regimes we had seen that the entire development of that Himalayan region, the areas surrounding the LAC, were left underdeveloped so that China could not make inroads. This government has had a very, very serious policy change in terms of not just developing roads and even all-weather roads, but in fact even going to the extent of trying and developing those areas as tourist spots and ensuring that the public is able to come and access the LAC at different points. And that has been the kind of focus as far as this particular government is concerned. Naturally, all of this is something that has unnerved China in the past, and also the fact that India at multiple fora has been raising the role of China and its unprovoked aggressions, not just India but several countries in Asia that have seen Chinese aggression, whether it is the South China Sea, the East China Sea. Many countries have time and again pointed out to the role of unprovoked aggression coming in from the side of China, and once again that is very much clearly on display over here with this kind of an unprovoked crossing over of the LAC. Thankfully, of course, this skirmish has left soldiers with only minor injuries, and we've not seen the kind of serious injuries that we had seen in earlier attempts by China. But once again, this misadventure, at least from what reports are initially coming in, appears to have been pushed back quite successfully by the Indian Armed Forces.
Okay, this incident, let's recap for our viewers, happened on the 9th of December. On the 10th was when the flag meeting was conducted. Padmaja, it's only 3 days after this has taken place that we are getting to learn from it. Have we heard officially from the Indian defense sources or from the Chinese side on this matter as to what exactly is the number, whether the soldiers were concerned when they got into a fight or the injuries?
No, so they are not confirming any numbers. There is no number put to it. But like I said earlier, one thing that we can assure our viewers about is that the nature of the altercation that happened was not very serious. There was a bit of jostling. There were words exchanged. Essentially what happened, Priya, was now there is regular patrolling that both sides do. If you remember, some time ago, there were images that we had got from Sikkim where, Indian Army and the PLA soldiers were face to face, and essentially these are all areas where you don't have any boundary wall or, a fencing of any kind. So it's entirely based on perception, and on that perception line, both troops regularly go and patrol. Now, if you happen, because again, this is not an area where you can easily demarcate. There is no real marker which you can say that, oh, this is my territory. So you go entirely by perception, and if you happen to be in an area which the other side claims for its own, then there were words exchanged, and then people pushed each other. So that is the nature, and there are minor injuries, there is bruising, there are no serious injuries, there was no sharp weapons, unlike what we remember happened in Galwan. As of yet, there is no confirmation of any kind of sharp instrument or any blunt instrument being used or any grievous injury having been inflicted. Now, since we were talking earlier about the kind of push that India has done, I've got a little more data about it just to tell our viewers about why, if you had a neighbor who was expansionist and who wanted to intimidate you with the sheer amount of infrastructure that they put at their border, China would not be very happy today. Here is why. The total projects announced in the northeast were about 1.6 lakh crores, Priya. And in Arunachal alone, that amount was close to 44,000 crores.
Right.
All right, go back.
I'm sorry.